Eddie Murphy's a creep. Eddie Murphy just, evolved into a creep. And why I say that is because of a recent Netflix interview he did. I think it's called Being Eddie, or Eddie of Being Eddie. And, he basically sat up there and talked about his life, his start to, from the time he was born up until this time and all the things he'd been through and everything, But of course, he left out certain things. He left out, the rumors about him and Johnny Gill and they punk on punk activity, or the thing with the transgender prostitute, among other alleged encounters and people who have talked about Eddie Murphy's pansexual activities. Bisexual, whatever, trisexual, whatever. That's all left out, of course. But what he said, about Rick James and Red Fox, and even Buckwheat, the guy Billy Thomas who played Buckwheat, it reeked of a lot of creep energy. He talked about how Red Fox and Rick James both died broke, and he also talked about how he had to bury these guys. He talked about how he had to bury these guys. He made reference to them as these people, right? He made reference to them as these people and how they died broke and whatnot. And it came off as very condescending, very uppity, very snobbish for a man who benefited from both of these two men that he buried. You benefited from Rick James because he gave you your first musical hit, your first number one musical hit, Party All the Time, came from Rick James, which I'm pretty sure you still getting money off Eddie Murphy. I'm pretty sure you still get paid off a Party All the Time. So Rick did you a big favor producing that song for you. Plus, he let you and your brother Charlie hang around him when y'all was just, when you was just getting into business like that, and getting famous. You hung around Rick James, your brother hung around him. You've been to his house. You've been around this man. Now, granted, Rick James had problems. People have problems in the world. He was on drugs and everything else. That's known. The man had demons. He had a problem, but he still called you a friend. You looked at Rick James as a friend, right? At least that's what you and your brother Charlie said. Y'all saw Rick James as a friend. Y'all partied with him. You hung out with him. Your brother had a bunch of stories from on the Dave Chappelle show that, reinvigorated Rick James' name and also his name and helped boost the Chappelle show. So me saying all that, you knowing Rick James was a benefit to you. You knowing Rick James was a benefit to you financially for your hit Party All the Time, and just being in the company of a person like a Rick James that helped boost your celebrity. Because Rick was big at the time. Now, again, Rick James fell on hard times because of his own self, his own doing, his own, he hit self-destruct on himself with the use of the drugs. But knowing that Rick James had this weakness, knowing that Rick James, just like anybody, is flawed, you would have thought that in this man's death, you would have been like, you know what, Rick, that's my brother, that's my friend. Of course, he had issues and whatnot, but I'm not going to hang that man out to dry in front of the public for no reason at all. You made it seem like Rick James was some bum, some loser, somebody who just, was some damn down bad, bum that just had to come to you and you had to pay for his funeral and things like that. Like I said, you know how the game goes, Eddie. You know how these racist Caucasians and other people in this industry rob our people, underpay our people, don't pay our people, all kinds of ways they cheat our people. Plus, Rick James was working against himself. Understanding all that, if you are truly an evolved man, if you are truly a greater man of understanding, you'd have been like, you know what? That was Rick's life, but he was an asset in my life. So if he down bad, I'm gonna make sure that man, I'm gonna pay for his funeral, because you a multi-millionaire, Eddie Murphy, many times over. So, paying for a Rick James funeral was nothing to you. That's literally, a drop in the bucket. That's literally nothing for you to make sure Rick is sent out right. He was your friend. He gave you that, like I said, your big R&B hit party all the time. He was a friend to you and your brother, you see. And for you to try to degrade this man on your little Netflix bio for no reason at all, to act like you better than him or that he's beneath you, that was some real creep shit. And then you did the same thing to Red Foxx in the same bio. You tried to talk about Red Foxx. Red Foxx opened the door for you. Red Foxx opened the door for you, nigga. He opened the door for you and Richard Pryor with all that blue comedy. He was doing this stuff in the 40s and the 50s and whatnot before you was even thought about. Red Foxx opened the door for you. He made a lane for people like you, Richard Pryor, Paul Mooney, all them people. So when Red Foxx, due to his drug issues, due to his, not paying his taxes, being ripped off by people, things like that, again, he fell down. He fell bad. IRS came in, took all of his stuff for back taxes and what he owed. I don't know if you paid his tax bill. I don't know if you came in and helped him. That's good if you did. You owe it to Red because he made a way for you. If it wasn't for Red Foxx, there'd be no Eddie Murphy. There'd be no Richard Pryor. Okay? He was the blueprint. Red don't get the credit he deserved for the party albums, the adult language and things like that you guys soared to fame on later. So because the man was down bad, because he, fell on hard times, you gave him that show, The Royal Family, because Red could definitely recoup himself in some kind of way over time. If he lived long enough, you would have got whatever you put out back from him, off his salary or whatever the case may be. But when, he's a respected mentor like you claim, then you just do it. Because again, it's nothing but a drop in the bucket to you. And I seen Red Foxx headstone. So Eddie Murphy, for you that bragged about paying for Red Foxx funeral, man, it wasn't brag worthy. You should have sent both of those men out of here like the icons they deserve. You should have put them both in a mausoleum. You should have did that, Eddie Murphy, because those are the icons. These are the giants. This is what shows. This is how the black people see black people as being crabs in the barrel and petty. If people see us like that, this is exactly why. Because these men, you basically tried to shit on them, when they're not here to defend themselves, or, you shame them in front of the world. People are going to remember your last words, about Rick James and Red Foxx. You made them look like a couple of bums. That's what you made them look like. You see, if you do something nice for people, then just do something nice for them. And you don't got to throw it in nobody's face, because it's really nobody's face to throw it in. Why are you going to do something nice for these men and then talk about it on your special like they ain't shit? You see, like I said, nobody brought up the obvious things people could have said about you and your fun boy activity. You people could bring that up about you. Then you also talked about how you buried Buckwheat a headstone. He was one of the biggest characters you played mimicking Buckwheat on Saturday Night Live. So for you to buy a little headstone for Billy Thomas, you felt like, that was what? That was big of you? That's the least you could do. Again, this is why nobody respects black people. This is exactly why, because y'all act like crabs in the barrel. As soon as one of you gets something, you start acting like some uppity ass dude. Again, these was not random people you did acts of kindness for. These were people who you drew heavily from, was around, was in their world, was in their universe, was in their atmosphere, and you drew from that. You took from that. You gained from that. Playing Buckwheat on Saturday Night Live, getting that hit from Rick James, being in the energy of a Red Foxx who was famous way before you, and he embraced you. You see, that stuff, that type of adulation is priceless. It's priceless. And that's how you came off when you was in the presence of these men when they were alive. You was very humble around Richard Pryor and Red Fox when they was in Harlem Nights and stuff. You was very humble around them, these two icons. And now, and Rick James when you was around the studio, and now they gone, you shit on them. But that's you, Eddie Murphy. You really evolved into a creep. I just had to say that. You really need to check yourself out.